skydiving. Hope comes and stops us in our tracks. Bravely we prove in our striving, trudging together each day. Where there's a will, there's a way.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Friday's edition of Raw Recovery with Dion Miller. I'm very, very excited about today. For the first time, we're bringing on an Al-Anon. And addiction and alcoholism, substance use disorder, whatever you want to call it, it affects everybody around them, especially people in the family. And I myself am eternally grateful to Al-Anon because it saved my marriage and probably saved my life. And I don't think that as people in recovery that we realize that our family members and the people around us that love us are supporting us in ways that we don't even know about. And we're going to kind of discover that today with Kevin. Kevin, you also, I'm going to introduce you here. You also run a company called Open Mind, Open Heart. So first off, welcome to the show. We're so happy to have you here.
Great. Thank you, Dion. I'm happy to be here today and just really grateful to be able to share some recovery with you and also with your listeners today. Really excited to be here and really want to help anyone else out there that's looking at recovery and going through this whole process.
That's fantastic. Why don't you tell us a little bit about Open Mind, Open Heart?
Well, this is actually my third business that I've had. I was a teacher for about 18 years.
Wow.
And then I ran my own gardening business for another 18 years and just retired that right before COVID. But in my background, I had a lot of spirituality and a lot of recovery. I have about 34 years of Al-Anon recovery.
Wow.
And I felt like there was such a huge need with COVID that there needed to be people out there listening. So what I did is I have a Facebook page. If you look me up on Open Mind, Open Heart, you can find me there, or on this website, Trudging Together Group. And for those on this that are listening today on this podcast, I'm going to give some discount to the services that I have.
Wow, thank you.
At this time, it's like a pay what you can.
Okay.
And a portion of the income that comes in from this podcast and from the people that get in contact with me will go to the Denver Women's Correctional Facility
Fantastic.
To buy recovery literature. I've been involved in bringing the program to Denver Women's Correctional for the last 8 years, and we really try to be fully self-supporting. But there's no way that they can bring in their own income. So this is sort of my way of reaching out during COVID to people that are hurting and just need someone to listen to. I don't have all the answers.
Sure.
But I have some program materials and goodwill that I want to just pass on to other people during this time, especially. So well, that's what it's all about.
I think part of being a coach is realizing that we don't have all the answers, but what we do have is the resources to those answers. And that's where you and I come in on that. And I'd like to talk more about the Denver Women's Correctional, but I want to get into your story too.
Great.
I'd really like to hear why you're doing what you're doing and kind of qualify all this. So let's maybe go back to, I don't know if it's the beginning but let's start your story and we'll go from there.
Great, Dion. That sounds great. I guess the thing that really is important to me right now is the why. Why I love this program, and it's really to help others feel welcome, accepted, understood, no matter where they're coming from.
Yes.
A safe place where one feels they can succeed in the face of any and all types of challenges, especially around addiction. And
correct.
my hope to inspire others to do what inspires them in recovery, to be able to find their own solutions, make contact with that spiritual awakening, with the God of their understanding. And, it's welcome to everybody. We have incredibly low standards of this program. Everybody's welcome. And, I just, my hope is that we can do good with your program and with what I have to offer for the greatest, largest number of people possible. So it's huge. I have a huge vision of what this is all about. So,
Yeah, that is fantastic. And absolutely, when I was 15, my mom made me go to AA. Because she was new in AA, because she knew I had a problem already, and I have brothers and sisters. She didn't take them, but if I wouldn't have gotten that knowledge when I was 15 years old, I wouldn't have known what to do when I was 19.
Exactly. Yeah. It's funny, Dion, that you mentioned that. My first AA meeting was when I was 16.
Okay.
And I'm not in AA.
Yeah.
But let me give you just a little bit of background. I grew up in East Denver, 5 kids in the family. My dad was an alcoholic, and my brother was a drug addict and alcoholic. His drug of choice was meth. He was in motorcycle gangs. So we had a lot of trauma, physical abuse, verbal, some sexual abuse. Later in my life, one of my daughter's exes got our grandkids involved in a shooting at a meth house. Wow. So I mean, we just like been all over the map with this. And but the thing about it that was kind of interesting about getting back to 16, one of my dad's drinking buddies, she went into recovery, and she was a ex-Denver police officer. She was a Denver police officer, and had like Marine Corps training. She could have been a UFC fighter. She was so tough. So she got sober, and our family was falling apart, and she kind of was acted like a parent to me. Yeah. So she used to take me fishing and hiking, and she saw all the trauma going on in the family and started to take me to open AA meetings. So, so I went to a bunch of open AA meetings. And for any of your listeners that have been around recovery a long time, I used to go to the open meetings at the first cafeteria over by Cherry Creek. Way back. So I had a lot
that is going way back for us.
I know, it's like super way back. And she'd haul me to all these different meetings. And by the time I was 18, I'd already read the big book. But I never really looked at it in terms of my own life. I always looked at it trying to fix them, or it was all about them. And so what happened is one of the AAs at the meeting told me that, we got a program for you. And at that time I couldn't hear it. Yeah. So by this time my brother had died. He really hung out with a lot of really rough people. It was either suicide or murder. He was a meth dealer, and had tried to trade his motorcycle for drugs, and it really ended up badly. And so he didn't survive. And then my dad had 1 year of recovery before he passed away.
Wow, cool.
And, at his bottom, he had done a lot of blackout drinking. And so what had happened with him, he on one of his last blackouts, he didn't know where he was, what city he was in, or where he was at. He went up to this house and gave this lady his driver's license and said, "I don't know who I am or where I am, but I need help." Wow. And then fortunately my dad was able to go to Hazelden. So so he did Hazelden. He did 1 year of recovery there. And looking back now, it's one of the greatest gifts that he gave us. And I couldn't see it at the time, but that 1 year of recovery is all the difference in the world. And it changed my life. And so for your listeners out there, 1 year of recovery is huge. 1 day of recovery is huge. 1 hour, 1 minute of recovery is huge.
Thank
because
you
you
for
affect the
that.
lives of so many other people, and you don't know the power of your program in the lives of other people. And
Hmm.
his example is what finally got me closer to getting into Al-Anon.
Okay.
So fast forward, okay, so I lived through all this stuff that had gone on in the family,
All right.
and but my life was not getting any better. My thinking was destroyed. It was very distorted.
Okay.
Um, and I had 3 kids. Wife was having many problems with depression, anger,
Sure.
isolation. And what I found out is that the mind is such a huge part of how this disease plays out.
Hmm.
And it's what we're thinking and believing that causes so much of the suffering.
Correct.
And I didn't know what to do with my suffering. And so I usually hid and isolated. And
Okay.
I was afraid to even leave my home. I
Wow.
was pretty sick, but I could still hold a job, but
Hmm.
I wasn't doing well. And so my wife gave me a book called "It'll Never Happen to Me,"
Hmm.
and because she was very concerned, and I was not open to asking for help, but I did read the book.
Okay. All right.
So I read this book, and it just like opened all kinds of doors for me because it made the connection again back to what I'd learned from the police officer friend.
Hmm.
That, oh man, I'm part of this disease too,
Yeah.
and that the disease continues to go on whether the alcoholic is still drinking or not.
Correct.
And so for me, what I did is I took that book, and with a little courage and encouragement from my wife, I
Hmm.
called the Al-Anon Service Center. So I called the service center, and
Wow.
you talked about this black belt
Yeah.
Al-Anon. Well, I met her. She was incredible. So I
Yeah.
get talking to her on the phone, and I just felt like right at home. Many of the same types of experiences
Hmm. Yeah.
that I had, Dion, and so she had. Everything was going really good in the conversation until she asked me about going to a meeting.
Uh-oh. So,
So there was no way I
did
wanted
you
to
give
go.
was there some pushback on that?
Oh yeah, there was no way I wanted to go to a meeting with this lady. So
Okay.
she goes to me, she goes, "Where do you live?" And being the good people pleaser that I was, I told
Yeah.
her where I lived. so she goes, "You don't live too far from me. I'm going to come over to your house and pick you up and
Hmm.
take you to a meeting." That is so unheard of today. You wouldn't
Hmm.
even think of
Yeah.
someone having that much courage. But I figured, well, if that lady had a little bit of courage, maybe I could have a little courage too.
Yeah.
So she pulls up in this old beat up car. I think she borrowed it from Uncle Buck or something like that. so, so anyway, she pulls up, and I think it backfired when she pulled in front of our house. And I turned to my wife and I said, "Do you think it's safe to go with her?" So,
That's
anyways,
probably the safest car on the block.
I know it probably was. So she comes to the door, and we let her in, and then my wife takes one look at her and says, "Take him."
Yeah. Please. Yeah. Yeah, and that actually reminds me of a story when my mom was still kind of new, and I've been going to AA meetings with her. There was one day she was having a real hard time, and she was angry, and she was just in a real bad mood. And I literally picked her up and put her in the car and said, "You go to a meeting now and get
Mhm.
out of here."
Right.
Um,
Well, I thank God for those people, man. They know how
uh,
to. They really know how to cut through all the bullshit, and she
yeah,
had the best bullshit protector I've ever
that's
seen.
that's
Her detector was incredible. So I get in the car. There's like no seat belts. I'm sliding around the front seat. Every time she talks to me, I'm sliding into her. So she takes me to my meeting, and then she takes me to my first 3 meetings. So she told me, she said, "I'm going to pick you up and I'm going to take you." And then the beautiful thing about this woman is that she called me every day, and
okay.
she said, "I'm going to call you every day until you learn how to call other people."
Mm-hmm.
And she did. She kept her word, and that was one thing that I could really trust with her. That this was finally someone I could really trust.
Yeah.
That knew
That
where I was coming from. She knew how sick I was, how confused I was, and she took me by the hand. And I tell you, Dion, within within 2 weeks, I must
Uh-huh.
have done 14 meetings.
Uh-huh.
I was in a step study group,
Okay.
uh, and I was already doing service and making daily phone calls.
Yeah. She had you going.
She did. And
That's phenomenal.
then after 2 weeks, she looks at me and she says, you don't have a sponsor. She says, I'm going to be your sponsor until
Yeah.
I find you one.
Yeah. Till I find you one. What a great Al-Anon.
I didn't have a choice.
That's what's so fantastic about Al-Anon, though. That's where I learned my boundaries.
Oh yeah.
They're really good with that. Anyway, go ahead. I'm enjoying the story.
Oh, good. Well, and we just kept going to step study groups, and I grew so much. And she did like a sponsor bypass eventually, but I could always count on her to talk to and to call, and she just cut through everything. But she kept her word, and I knew I was going to be okay. And so work the steps quickly in the program. And at that time I was a teacher.
Okay.
And so it was really I had kind of an interesting part of my first recovery. So I was stayed with her group in step study meetings for about 2.5 years.
Okay.
And then I had an opportunity, a job opportunity in New Zealand. So I had enough courage by that point and enough self-confidence and inspiration to really get my life going. And it was all due to Al-Anon and all the work that she helped me with in my life. And so I take my family to New Zealand, and but prior to going, I wrote to the Al-Anon Service Center in New Zealand.
Okay.
And so in the first week when we get to New Zealand, I mean, you go to a foreign country with your family and kids, it's so different. And I was the first man that they had go to their meeting in a women's resource center.
Wow.
So that was kind of different. So, but by the time I left New Zealand, she had, I had been going to a lot of meetings there and doing a lot of program there as well. And also bringing a lot of the kids that I was teaching in the school, they had parents that were in the meetings and recovery. So it was amazing. I still have friends to this day that are from there. But what's really neat about it is that it really opens up a lot of things. But there's also a part that a lot of people don't think about with Al-Anons is that, AAs, we hear a lot about geographicals. Yeah. And for me, there was a little portion of this that was geographical.
Okay.
And because when I was in the meetings there, and I taught at a women's college there.
Okay.
And so I had some, background to do that. And there was a lot of sexual abuse issues and incest and stuff like that was going on at that time down there.
Okay.
And it was coming up a lot in the meetings. And I kept thinking to myself, oh my God, I'm glad I didn't have any of that stuff happen to me.
Yeah.
I figured God put me in this meeting for a reason. So it started to open up. I had to be far enough away from my family to kind of look at that part of the recovery process.
Sure. Yeah.
And then being that far away from my family, which is really far away, I started to see some things and started to question some things that I didn't really want to handle in my recovery. And so anyways, we leave New Zealand, come back, and we came back pretty poor. We came back with 20 boxes, 16 suitcases, no car, no place to live. We were basically homeless for a while.
Okay.
And I got the first job I could find, did construction work with bricklayers, and picked up a car. And we ended up staying with family for a little bit, but eventually we got back up on our feet. But it was like my whole world was, even though I had a support group to come back to, that had changed a lot because I had changed a lot.
Yeah.
And
absolutely.
And I hope your listeners, that are listening pick up on that too, that, this whole recovery process opens many doors, and some we don't really want to go through.
Sure.
And this was one I did not want to face. And so I come back, I started talking about some of the things that I learned in New Zealand and started scaring other people in recovery. Yeah, they didn't want to hear it.
What, like
So
emotional sobriety? Yeah.
yeah, like, oh my God,
Did you
my
say
emotions,
trauma?
yeah, they were like frozen and I was like
Mhm.
thawing out, and um, so basically what happened is I tried to find the safest people I could find in recovery. Still was going to meetings faithfully, was, working with a sponsor. Um, Felt like I needed to go into counseling because it was too heavy to bring into meetings.
Okay.
And so for your listeners, it's okay to ask for outside help,
Oh
and
yeah.
that can look like a lot of different things.
Mm-hmm.
God is everything, including medicine, if
Mm-hmm.
that's part of your journey. And so for me, what I did is I started doing the counseling, and all these memories and crap came out, and
Yep.
so it just got deeper and deeper, and I got so into a hole I thought I'd never come out again.
Wow.
And for me, I thought I was having a breakdown,
Okay.
and at the time I didn't realize it was really a breakthrough for me.
Mm-hmm.
So of course, being thinking I'm right about everything, which is, trying to be right is doesn't go away easily.
No, it
And
doesn't.
so, I'm starting to take other people's inventories, which is
Mm-hmm.
really none of my business.
Yep.
And so I started bringing up issues with family members that they didn't want to talk about. And so what happened, the short of it is that my mom and sisters stopped talking to me for about 18 years.
Okay.
And it was like a living death. It was
Yeah.
probably the most hurtful thing I'd ever experienced. And I didn't know what to do. I tried to take care of what I could, but it was like
Sure.
like a living death is the only thing I can kind of describe it.
I get it.
And
I understand. I can certainly understand that. Oh yeah.
yeah,
And I
and
know the listeners will too. Oh yeah.
so if you're in that hole where you think it's not going to end the pain, it's not going to end the suffering, it's not going to end the despair, it's not going to end the hope, you know, I just want to let you know that there's a way through. And I
Mm-hmm.
didn't see it even in my own recovery.
Yeah.
And it didn't require anyone else to change.
Mm-hmm.
It only required me to change.
Yeah.
And so my whole program took another level
Yeah.
that I never knew could even be possible in the 12 steps. And
Mm-hmm.
it was like even though I'd done the steps, done inventories, tried to do amends to get people to make amends back to me. I mean, I tried everything I could. I was still manipulating like crazy.
Yep.
And so,
Where's my
but
amends?
yeah. And you think, why is this guy laughing? His family hates him, and
Yeah.
his whole life is fucked at this point.
It's because
what
we
is he gonna do?
recover. That's why we're laughing.
I know, because
Yeah.
there is a solution,
There is.
so one of the breakthroughs for me was that as I said before, it required me to go deeper, and I had to wake up to see another side of step one.
Okay.
And for me, I was powerless over alcoholism. My life had become unmanageable. And in
Mm-hmm.
Al-Anon, we talk about I'm powerless not only over alcoholism, but I'm
Okay.
powerless over people, places, and things.
Yep.
And not only that, I'm powerless over what I'm believing about people, places, and things, and how I'm reacting
Yeah.
to people, places, and things. And that for me was huge because
Mm-hmm.
I discovered that when I believed my stressful thoughts, I suffered.
Yes.
But when I started to question them, which is what that first lady did for me, she asked me
Mm-hmm.
questions all the time.
The hard
And
questions.
hard questions that had truth in them.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, it was finding the God of my understanding what was happening for me is those beliefs that were keeping me from recovering became my higher power.
Okay.
So there was no room for God there was no room for that spiritual awakening. There was
Okay.
no room for any of those truths to come through. So I had to go back and really re-look at my stressful thinking. And
Mm-hmm.
what I found out is that, the suffering was optional. You hear that
Yeah.
a lot of times, that pain's inevitable, but suffering's optional.
Yep.
And suffering for me was the thoughts I was believing, the way I was reacting. And I figured through the help of step one, if I could meet my thoughts with love and understanding, I could meet you with love and understanding.
Yes.
And that's where it really started to begin. And there's an analogy I just want to say here, Dion, is that how it was for me was there's a story about this guy that goes out into the desert, and he's going
Okay.
out at sunset time. And the sun is very bright. He knows there's rattlesnakes out in this particular area.
Mm-hmm.
So he's walking out in the desert, and then all of a sudden he steps on a rattlesnake. And he thinks, oh my God, my car is like 2 miles away. I'm
Mm-hmm.
never going to see my family again. If this snake bites me, I'm done for. I can never make it back.
Mm-hmm.
And then finally what happens as the sun starts to clear, he looks down and he sees that he's standing on a rope. And for me, I started to figure out all those things I was believing were
Mm-hmm.
ropes.
Mm-hmm.
And I could
Nice.
make my own, misery by what I was believing and thinking, and realizing that all problems are ropes.
Yeah.
And that includes everything that I had gone through with my family, that they were the ropes that I was really, dealing with there.
Sure. Now, do you think that maybe there's some PTSD in there with the
I
trauma that you went through, and because I'm kind of seeing some triggers.
oh yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
I know that PTSD, it needs to be, you have to go through certain steps, but we can kind of see signs too, or even acute anxiety going on. And that
Absolutely.
probably helped. The therapy probably really helped with that.
Yeah, you know what? I stopped the therapy because it was making me sicker, and that's important for people to realize that
Okay.
sometimes you got to make some wise decisions with that. I had one therapist that made me sicker and another that helped.
Okay.
But it really came down to me
Yeah.
it really came down to me and my trust in my higher power and doing my own work
Mm-hmm.
with that. And I figured if I can, all these stressful thoughts are recycled all the time. There's no new stressful thoughts. And that's same for anxiety is just simply believing something that's not true.
Mm-hmm.
And, that PTSD is being stuck in a story. And I was stuck in the story I was standing on the snake with my family for years. And without ever questioning to see what was really true and what was not true.
Mm-hmm.
Because if we see it, we believe it.
Correct.
But that doesn't necessarily make it true.
That is
And
correct.
for me, that my higher power is all about that relationship with truth.
Mm-hmm.
And that loving, I started to learn how to love what is.
Yeah.
And even though sometimes it's not always clear what that looks like, it moved me away from that universal addiction that's so easy we all share the same addictions,
Yeah.
and even with, like AA and, like I like to think a little bit about, we're drunk with our thinking long before we're ever drunk with our drinking. And with us, we're addicted to our alcoholic, and we're addicted to our way of thinking about things. And it isn't until I started to do some questioning and really do some inside work to really, get clear on what was true and what was not.
Mm-hmm.
And but that first addiction, whether even before like the drugs and all that, or it's what we're thinking and believing. And that's there's a reward, there's a drug with what you're believing.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why you can feel like a higher power.
Mm-hmm.
And so that belief can be just as powerful until it's questioned. The mind hates questioning. It doesn't it wants to hold on to what it wants to be right, it wants to hold on to what it believes. But once you start questioning it loses its power. You know,
Mm-hmm.
you either believe what you think or you question it. There's really no other choice.
Yeah.
And for me, that's where my higher power really helped me a lot, is to see the difference in what was true and what was not true. And one thing that's interesting too is when you believe something, there's like a reward. It's like an addiction. You know,
Mm-hmm.
it rewards you because it gives meaning and purpose in life, whether it's even true or not.
Yep. And
And
it supplies your brain with dopamine. Um,
absolutely,
and
yeah.
that could be for an alcoholic, feeling that way is a high in and of itself. Um, but I think you're absolutely right. I mean, the addiction is different, but I still see I might as well be talking to an alcoholic.
we all we start with the first addiction, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And I don't mean to brag or anything, but I certainly don't need alcohol to destroy my life.
Yeah,
I don't need alcohol and drugs to do that. I can do that perfectly fine all on my own.
yeah, so
So,
true.
and
So,
what I'm hearing from you is a lot of discovery. You know, I'm a big, I'm 50, and I'm showing my age here, but GI Joe says knowing is half the battle. And
mm,
once we can recognize those feelings, then I can do something about it. Okay, this is going on. It happened to me this morning. I had some anxiety. I was able to recognize it, and once I recognized it, all the power was gone, like you were talking about.
absolutely. You know, and that for me was like, how do I make those connections when a lot of those connections were damaged by, what we were growing up with or what we're
Yeah.
living with? And for me, what happens is, if I believe a thought, a stressful thought, say, for example, there's
Okay.
always going to be a reaction to it. And a reaction for me is either a feeling, or it's a behavior,
Okay.
or it's a picture, or it's an addiction.
Yeah.
And that's kind of how all that goes together for me. And I it was all over our literature. We have in Al-Anon, and I've read our literature over hundreds of times, but
Sure.
we have, one of the things I kept missing in it is that we have 37 pages in our literature that talks about questioning what you're believing.
Okay.
And and how are you reacting? Like, for example, one of the questions is it true, and can you absolutely know it's true what you're believing?
Yeah.
And how do you react when you believe that thought?
Mm-hmm.
And then another question they had was, what would your life look like if you never had that thought? And
Yeah.
we never
Well,
entertained that whole
no,
idea.
we
What would
don't.
you like? What
Yeah.
would it be like? And to look at the opposites and find examples of how the opposites. And for me, I found a lot of I held a lot of the answers to my own problems by asking the
Yes.
questions.
Yes.
And sometimes a really good therapist can do that for you, but sometimes they can't.
Yeah.
Um, and you have to. For me, I had to go deep enough to really look at it. And that to me is really what step two is about. Uh, Came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. And for me, the
Mm-hmm.
sanity part was I was doing same thing over and over, expecting different results
Mm-hmm.
without questioning those stressful beliefs. Um, and for me, the picture I think of with this is when one of the times I was in Denver Women's Correctional, I was in one of the cell blocks,
Okay.
and it had all the tears going up, and I heard this, the doors, clang, and they're really
Fine.
loud and everything.
Yeah.
And there was a woman up on the third tier that was screaming when they slammed the door, and then pretty soon there were like two others that started screaming,
Yep.
and then there were three, and then there were four, and it just kind of went on and on and on, and what they were locked up with was their thoughts.
Mm-hmm.
They go in there, and they go in believing what they're thinking, and they do what they do because they're believing what they're thinking,
Mm-hmm.
and without ever questioning it. And they don't know that, and I didn't know it in my own life.
Yeah.
So, one of the helps of this program is that spiritual awakening where we find the truth and ask questions to help us get to that truth. And you take like a Buddhist monk, you lock him up in there or her up in there, and they go, "Thank you,"
Yeah.
because they're locked up with what they're thinking and believing.
Yeah, and they want to be there. Absolutely. And that's a fantastic way to put it, is, they were locked up with their thoughts without any kind of relief or hope inside of it.
Right.
And then unfortunately, if we are at that point, then we will seek out other people to reinforce it. Misery loves company.
Right.
And that probably all started from a door being slammed. When a door slams and I hear it, I automatically, okay, who's angry? That's my first thing. Who's angry in the house? Why are we slamming doors? It sets out, it's a trigger. It's my PTSD trigger.
Exactly.
And I just have to be okay with that. There's nothing going on, Dion.
Yeah. I don't let go of my thoughts. I meet them with love and understanding, and then they let go of me.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. Yeah.
In the same way, like with the steps, working the steps, drinking will quit you. You don't quit drinking. And the same with our thinking in the Al-Anon program. Work the steps, and that thinking will quit you. And one thing I kind of found too is that in the program, especially with step 2, is that sanity doesn't suffer ever. When you're saying you're meeting those thoughts, you're meeting those reactions with love and understanding. And if I can do that, and that's why I can go into the darkest stories in prisons, because I started to meet my own darkness. I started to meet my own suffering. I started to meet my own loneliness. I started to meet my own depression, my own fear and misunderstanding and rejection, and you name it. Once I could start to love that in myself, I could learn how to love that in others, and create a space, a safe space, to be able to share that I understand, and I don't have your answer, but I have some questions you might want to take a look at.
And yeah, exactly. And I whether, I don't think it really matters who you are. You got to take once you can take a real, honest look at yourself, things are going to start changing for you. And I like how you're saying, I met them, because then I started to put in my mind, that is what I'm doing. I'm meeting my depression halfway, man. I'm not going to let it come up and sneak. No. So I really appreciated that analogy. That was fantastic. Let's do a little bit of plug-in. Let's do some plug-in. Open mind, open heart. Let's hand out some phone numbers and some emails.
Okay. So if you're interested in, checking this out, it's called Open Mind, Open Heart, and go to Facebook and you'll find my name, Kevin Skillen, there, and do a private message to me on Facebook. And
I'm going to spell your last name for everybody. It is Skillen. Skillen.
Yes.
Because I would not have spelt it that way. So.
Yeah. And again, just as a reminder to your audience there on Trudging Together group, there's a discount on anyone that approaches me through this website.
Okay.
Through your website, or if they make reference to this. And please pass the word on Trudging Together to your listeners too. And then it's a pay as you can at this time. I know a lot of people are going through what they're going through. And again, a portion of any of the income that I receive from, whether you pay full price or pay as little as nothing, I may ask you to bring literature, but we do want to get literature into the correctional facilities, as there's we do get some from our worldwide organizations, but
Sure.
it's very limited. And you know what? People steal stuff in prisons. I don't know if you knew that or not, but
And
can you?
and
Are you into recovery enough to steal a book? I hope
yeah.
you are.
And at least it's the right book this
Right?
time,
Yeah. You think you might find some answers for
And
yourself. So
and then for any of my recovery coach friends out there or listening, this is a great referral for family members for the clients that you're working with. This is a good opportunity for you to be able to get some help for them.
that would be
Um,
great. And if I'm not the person for you, we got a lot of great Al-Anon meetings all over the city and a lot of great Zoom meetings. And if I could plug one last thing,
Absolutely.
we have a weekend in Al-Anon coming up this weekend,
Okay.
and it's a Zoom call. If you go to the Colorado Al-Anon website,
Okay.
it gives you information on the Zoom meeting, and it doesn't cost anything. Everything's Zoom for the whole. It's a retreat weekend, but I'm speaking on Friday night from 8 to 9 o'clock.
Wow. Good
Um,
for you.
yeah. They asked me, so you're going to hear a little bit of this story again, but it's such a privilege, Dion, to be able to, and Jill, for you asking. I really appreciate your support, and I'll be able to pass some of this information on to some of my buddies in recovery too.
Yeah.
So
Well, it really comes down to this is a we program. And I don't care if you have a problem with addiction or not, because what we do helps everybody. I work with people without addictions, but everybody has one. Like you said, your first addiction. Really
yeah.
liking that. I'm gonna be stealing some stuff from you.
Yeah,
Um,
listen, take as much as you want, and again, my hope is that this inspires someone to take a look at either recovery or asking for help. One of the things I'd like to think about is that my mind alone is really, and Dion knows this is a dangerous neighborhood, and we have 1,000 people to the left of us, 1,000 people to the right of us that are there for us, that we don't have to do this journey alone.
yeah,
And there's a lot of help out there. So, it's like that gal that helped me out, pick up the
yeah,
phone, and she's going to call me until I can pick it up. So,
yeah. Learning to, you know, that's what's neat about these programs is we are loved until we learn how to love ourselves.
absolutely.
You know,
Couldn't say it better.
well, so yeah, again, thank you very much, Kevin, for being on and spending your time with us. Um, you know, guys, when it comes down to it, if we're going to do 12th step work with other people, it is always good we call them double dippers. And that means, and I attend Al-Anon every now and again. There's some great stuff in Al-Anon that helps me in my everyday life. The 12 steps aren't about staying away from drugs and alcohol. They're about finding a new way of life and then passing it on.
Absolutely.
Yeah. We are given these gifts and then we give them away freely. And that's what recovery looks like.
Yeah.
So,
And we're in this together.
that's it. And that's why, and it's all about community. We gotta work with our communities. I'm not gonna count on, government assistance, but I'm not gonna count on any president to help us out with it. We got ourselves here, and I think we need to get ourselves out. I think our community is responsible, and every time we decide to let somebody else take that responsibility, I think it's just nah.
Yeah, it all comes down to us anyways,
Yeah.
But we do it together, and that's where we get, and that's why service to me is the last piece, and you can't keep it unless you give it away. And
Yeah.
and the more we do for each other, the more we get to keep it. And it's our life insurance policy. It doesn't cost anything either. It just costs a little time and giving of yourself.
Yeah. A little bit of time and effort.
Time and effort.
and the gifts we get back are incredible. Fantastic. Thank you everybody for listening in on today's episode. I've had a great time getting to know Kevin. And then remember, you're gonna get a discount if you go through our page or his page. We will make sure that is in the we'll make sure that's in the post so that people know.
Great.
All right.
That's awesome. Really appreciate that. Thank you, listeners.
Thank you. All right, guys. I will be back on Tuesday with another episode of Raw Recovery with Dion Miller. In the meantime, you know it. I love you all. Peace out and have a day.